Hello and welcome to DudeCast TV. I'm your host, Norman Dexter, where I'm a dude who's going to talk about some shit. Today I have a little co-host. Say hello to Binks. He's my cat. My kids are of cats. He did not have a good time last night. I'm actually recording this on a Tuesday for a change, because yesterday was the 4th of July. And 10 out of 10 would recommend being in my neighborhood, because I have a neighbor who put out an actual Razzies performance last night. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but 0 out of 10 for him. He was not having a good time, so he's being extra cuddly today, and he is going to join me for at least part of today's recording. So enjoy this episode featuring Binks here. And if you're wondering, yes, he is named after the cat in Hocus Pocus, because he is a black cat, all the same. Anywho, as you can probably tell with him being here and my overall demeanor, this week is a little bit less anxiety-ridden, a little bit less sad and depressing. It's been pretty rough last few weeks, but I feel better. Things are going well, so I figured I'd talk about a more lighthearted subject. Back to more of the lifestyle stuff that's less dark, less eh. So today, I want to talk about what you should look for in a personal trainer. Particularly, I decided to name this podcast, so you want to be a personal trainer, huh? The idea being, this is going to be an episode that tells you what to look for in a trainer, and it tells you what to expect if you want to be a personal trainer. Okay? I'm going to go into a lot of the general aspects. I might do a follow-up video about this on another day, but it's sort of an application of a lot of the subject matter I've already been discussing. But let's jump in. First and foremost, the most important thing a trainer needs to have, whether you are the trainer yourself or you are seeking one out, the number one thing you need to look for is patience. That is the number one thing every trainer needs to have. Whether it's a coach, a trainer, a nutritionist, whoever you're working with when it comes to somebody that is guiding you in a lifestyle or behavior change, you need patience. And I'll explain why. Patience is absolutely paramount because you need somebody who is going to sit there with you while you figure shit out. What do I mean by that? Well, there are 4 utilities of a trainer. I'll come back to the patience after I list these off. The number one utility of a trainer is accountability. They get you to show up. You are paying them to make sure you show up. That is the number one reason people come to a trainer, in my experience. For me, the number one reason people come to me is for accountability. Not for weight loss, not to get stronger. It's for accountability. They want to show up consistently, and that's what they pay a trainer for. It's very easy to get a gym membership and not show up. So getting them to show up is the majority of the battle. Okay? So that's number one. That's the number one utility of a personal trainer or a coach or nutritionist or whatever. You get the person to show up. You get them to do something consistently. Number 2, a trainer will teach you how to do things correctly. So, for instance, they will show you form and technique to make sure you are safe and you are not going to hurt yourself. Number 3, they expedite the trial and error of figuring out what works best for you and your body and your lifestyle. So, somebody who works in IT is going to have a much different exercise routine than somebody who works in construction. Different injuries, different ailments, different diseases or conditions, different activity levels throughout their day. Big differences between a construction worker and somebody who works in IT at a desk all day. And so a trainer will expedite the trial and error to figure out what works best for you. That's where a lot of the patience comes in, but I'll circle back to it. The last one, number 4, is less often. Usually see this from retired athletes or current athletes who seek out a trainer for something to supplement their coaching or whatever they may be getting on their team or sport, whatever it may be, but it is to push you. So the 4th utility, and these are in order of how important they are, by the way, and how often you see somebody seeking you out for that reason. So the 4th one is that they want somebody to push them. Okay, the trainer is there to push that person. So I'll list those off again. Number one, accountability. Number two, teaching you proper technique, proper form, and making sure you're not going to hurt yourself. And add to that one too, maybe a little bit of rehab and therapy to make sure that any nagging injuries can be remedied, that sort of thing. And then number three is expediting the trial and error of figuring out what works best for you. And that's also figuring out a little bit of therapy, a little bit of rehab. If you have nagging chronic injuries, there may be certain things that you may need to do on a regular basis just to maintain your mobility, to maintain a lack of pain, so on and so forth. And then four, you want somebody to push you on a regular basis, to put you in that place that you can't take yourself. So those are the four utilities of a trainer that I have found, that I refer to when I'm referring to myself, or that I reference when referring to myself, rather. And when you have those, you need a patient person, because I mentioned the trial and error. That's going to be there, and it's going to vary widely from person to person. I'd say 5% or less of the time, when I get somebody who comes to me, say for weight loss or for physical therapy, those are the two big ones, usually weight loss and physical therapy. Those are the two big reasons people come to me. Very rarely do they actually follow through with what I tell them. What I mean is, I offer nutrition plans to 100% of my clients on day one. If you're an ongoing client with me, you get nutrition for free. That includes meal plans, nutrition education, and so on, so that you can get to what works best for you. Now, I customize it to the person. I make it their favorite foods. I ask, what are your favorite fruits? What are your favorite carbohydrate sources? Your favorite protein sources? Your favorite drinks, good and bad, so like alcohol and so on. Are there any foods that you will not eat? What's your average step count for the day? Are you taking any supplements? What's your sleep schedule like? What do you do for work? Those kinds of questions. And then I'll create a plan based on that. What's their work schedule? Do you work nights? Do you work long shifts? Are you on and then off? What's it look like? And so I'll customize a plan for them, both exercise and nutrition. And then I'll give it to them, and I'd say maybe 5% or less of the people I make that for actually use it. And maybe 15% of people work their way up to using that. But the vast majority of my clientele, 85% or more, usually more, do not abide by that. Most people just want the accountability aspect. This is where the patient comes in. The patience, rather, comes in. Because when I first started, I thought that if my client wasn't changing, it was my fault and I was a bad trainer. That can be true, but not everyone wants to change. I've used Oprah as an example when referring to this in the past on this podcast, but a good example is Oprah has billions upon billions of dollars. She could pay somebody to follow her around 24/7, 365, smack food the fuck out of her hand, and prevent her from eating and prevent her from gaining weight. Yet she consistently gains weight, loses weight, gains weight, loses weight, gains weight, loses weight. She hasn't figured out what works best for her. My job is to figure out what works best for my client. Now, sometimes people just want to maintain. They want to stay exactly the same. They come to me at 200 pounds, they want to stay at 200 pounds. But they also want to stay drinking bourbon, and want to stay going out late to concerts. They want to stay going out with friends and having a pizza and some beer. They want to stay doing what they're doing, and they're seeing me to maintain their lifestyle so they don't get worse. So they come to me at 200 pounds, and they stay at 200 pounds. If that's what the client wants, then that's what they get. You do your best as the trainer to suggest and encourage more healthy behaviors, but you can't always get that. You even see this with this fat acceptance movement. There are some people who want to be bigger. And if that's what they want, all right, good for them. At the very least, I'm going to offer them a way to be a healthier version of that bigger self. That's what I'm going to try to do. You can never force somebody to do anything. And I am not one to turn someone away just because they want to live their life. I adapt to the person. And that's the second thing. You have to mold, you as a trainer, you have to mold to the client so that you can offer them a unique approach. You cannot cookie cut this. There will be overlap. There are certain exercises that work from one client to the next, and there are certain exercises that will not, but there will be overlap. Just because there's overlap doesn't mean that you're cookie cutting the program. Because the third principle, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. So if you're keeping track, number one, be patient. Okay? Number two, You have to mold to the person, adapt to the person. And 3, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Those are the 3 aspects that you must focus on as a trainer. Or as the client being trained, that's what you should look for. If somebody has you standing on one leg, hopping up and down while trying to press things in the air, they're playing you. Say the least of it. And those are really important aspects of what to look for in a trainer, what to be and strive toward as a planner. That point there, that phrase, strive toward, I'm going to be saying that a lot in this episode because it is very important. And you'll see what I mean. Because it's to ensure that you stay humble throughout this. And it's very important because you never want to stop learning. You never want to stop challenging yourself. School is important, but experience is importanter. It's more important. I know. I'm just a jackass. So we'll get to all that. But I'm going to gush on this for a while. So, where to begin with all of that? It's a lot to unpack. Well, trainers always strive to be good, and we always are aiming for better. And this is inherently what makes for a good trainer, in my opinion, in my view. A trainer that doesn't seek continuing education of any kind, not a good sign. Now, that doesn't mean they have to go take a certificate, that they have to go get another degree. No. It doesn't have to be anything they spend money on. They just have to spend time on. So a good example of my day-to-day, I get somebody who has an injury that I'm not familiar with, and I research that injury. Now, this could mean reading articles, it could be reading academic journals, or it could be I am assessing the person, I'm figuring out, okay, does this movement hurt? Does that movement hurt? Does this exercise hurt? How about this? If I press here, does that hurt? Does it hurt when you wake up in the morning? Does it hurt when you do a certain thing, when you eat a certain thing? What triggers this? Is it just always happening? Is it chronic? Or it's seemingly random? Is it acute? Do you think you did something to cause this? I ask a lot of questions because I need to figure out what's going on. If I don't know something, I ask questions. If I don't know where to go to look, I will ask other trainers or other professionals in my field. And I will ask them, what do you think about this? Hey, I have this situation. What are your thoughts? That is continuing education in its basic form. It doesn't have to be a certificate. It doesn't have to be in a book. You are seeking new information, and that is important. You're trying to understand your client. You're molding to your client. You're adapting to them. And you're remaining patient as they stagnate in their progression because of this injury or this thing that you don't have an answer for yet. But you also have to be patient with yourself while you look for that answer. And these are important. But you also aren't trying to reinvent the wheel. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. You're not trying to do some crazy, wacky shit. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. Don't start from scratch. Use your foundations, use your fundamentals, and figure it out. And if you wholly cannot figure out how to help somebody, refer them out. Do not continue working with them unless they are willing to. If they're willing to continue working with you, even if you can't figure out what's wrong with them, and by what's wrong, I mean the injury, or whatever it is that you can't seem to figure out, be it weight loss or what have you, if they're okay to continue paying you money so that they can at least show up and do something, you need to have that conversation with them because that needs to be something that they say they are comfortable with and that they consent to. Otherwise, you're stringing them along unnecessarily and you are wasting their time and their money. And that's not good. Because again, we're striving to be good. But good trainers, at least those who strive to be good trainers, try not to deal in absolutes because there is always an outlier or some exception to the rule. And the same as a Sith Lord, beware those who do deal in absolutes. Because when you have somebody who deals in absolutes, they say always, they say never. When you have somebody that uses that sort of vocabulary when they're speaking with you, that dialogue, then that means they are very rigid in their style and their modalities of training. That means that it's their way or the highway, usually, not always. Because again, I'm not a Sith Lord. I'm not trying to be speaking in absolutes here. But people who deal in absolutes in their language oftentimes are very rigid in their modality of training style, which means that it can work for a lot of people. But that's when you start finding people that use cookie cutter programs and they'll use the same routine on every person And it doesn't seem to be changing. It remains unchanged as the person progresses. And if they start to stagnate, the trainer will just be like, well, you're just not working hard enough. And I do not like that. It is never the client's fault. Now, if a client fails to reach a goal, say a 15-pound weight loss, there can be a reason for that. But if you blame the client, there's an issue. If you sit there and tell them, well, you should have worked harder, there's a problem. And that problem is with your attitude and your approach to how you're dealing with this issue, in that you're dealing with it. You're not addressing the issue, you're dealing with it. No. Your client is never something to deal with. They are never an issue or a problem to deal with. There are obstacles and issues that arise that need addressing, and so the two of you together work to address those issues and overcome those obstacles together. It's a team effort. So you address the reason, and then you figure a way past it. You figure a way to move forward from there, so the stagnation no longer occurs. It is never the client's fault. Blame and fault have no place in a trainer-client relationship, period. Again, that's where patience comes in, because you're going to have to be patient with your client when they stumble and they run into obstacles that they can't seem to overcome right away. This can take days, weeks, months, or even years. They sometimes need the right motive. I had somebody for 5 years, and the first 3.5 years, they lost a total of 15 pounds. Then they got engaged and lost 77 pounds in 18 months. If you're patient, you'll eventually figure out what works best for them. Now, a good trainer molds to the client. I said this. And they remain malleable not only to the client's needs, but also what will satisfy them. So, not only are you trying to help your client achieve their goal, but you're trying to make sure that they're not absolutely fucking miserable. Let me explain. What this means is, you could give them the optimal training protocol for the best results possible, for the best yield. But if they're bored as hell with the program, they'll ultimately be unhappy and maybe even stop coming and stop doing it. It is not what is optimal that your client should be doing constantly in terms of their performance or whatever metric you're using to measure their progress. It is important that what they're doing is near optimal, yes, but very rarely do you find somebody who's willing to drone through the air quotes optimal routine, end air quotes. It is the trainer's job to read the client beyond what the client verbalizes to them. That being, I want to lose 25 pounds. You must read in between the lines. Let me explain. This could be any number of things, from improving their diet, sleep, and stress management to allow for better recovery, to working out less frequently to allow for better recovery that way. Some clients will respond to specific protocols much differently. Even if the end result is the same, there are certain steps to acquire said yield that the client just isn't willing to do. So, the example I just gave, recovery. You need somebody to not be as sore. You need somebody to recover better. Say they work third shift. They need more sleep. Well, if they need more sleep, you try to find a way to get them more sleep. If you cannot do that, then they cannot work out 4 or 5 times a week. Maybe they can only work out 3 times a week, and that's what they need to properly recover, as an example. So as the trainer, you need to push back and say, sorry, I know you want to come 4 or 5 times a week, but you can only do 3 because you're not getting enough sleep and you're not recovering, and we cannot push you too far. Not only will your progress stagnate, but you could hurt yourself. Use another situation. Somebody wants to work out 4 or 5 times a week, but they're not eating enough. They want to put on weight, they want to get stronger, they want to get bigger, more muscular. Well, if they're not eating enough, they can't go working out 4 or 5 times a week because they don't have enough food in their system to fuel and recover their body. Let's use another one. Somebody isn't recovering enough. They're still too sore. Same as those other 2 situations. All right? They're eating enough. They're sleeping enough. And they're working out just fine, with one problem. They push really fucking hard. Their intensity, I can't push them hard enough. I push as hard as I can, and they're always wanting more. I put them on the floor in between sets. They're rolling on the ground, just agonized, in pain, out of breath. But they can't physically eat more food. They can't physically get more sleep. And here's the kicker. They are not willing to take performance-enhancing drugs, and I'm not willing to advise on that because that's beyond my scope of practice. So they want to work out 4 or 5 times a week. However, if they maintain that intensity, because I know that type of person, I'm that type of person, I have to stop myself from working 5, 6 times a week because I'm a natural bodybuilder and I want to work out 5, 6 times a week to that intensity to put myself on the ground in between sets, but I can't do that. Even if I'm eating 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day, sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night, I cannot physically recover naturally unless I pull back my frequency for the week to 3 or 4 times. That's how I progress. That's how this person would progress in this situation. So in all 3 of those situations, you have to change and manipulate a variable. You have to change and manipulate a variable. Sorry, English is hard. You change and manipulate a variable so that your client can recover properly in that situation. Now, in all 3 instances, the goal is proper recovery, but 3 completely different approaches to that situation to make sure the client is happy. In all 3 situations, I have to deny them working out more than they want. They all want to work out more. They all want to work out 4 or 5 days a week so they can achieve their goal. But I have to tell them, no. We cannot do 4 or 5 workouts a week. Given I'm losing money by telling them, no, we can't do that because they're not sleeping enough, they're not eating enough, or they push so damn hard that any more 4 or 5 times a week instead of 2 or 3 is going to push them over the edge into a realm where they can no longer recover properly between workouts. So I am aware of what is best for them in that situation. Now, there's another way to solve that. Say those sessions were all for an hour. If I brought those down to half hours, but maintained the intensity with the guy that goes really hard, but maintained the food with the guy that likes to prefers to undereat, or if I did the same thing with the guy who just can't sleep because he works 3rd shift, if I switch those hours to half hours, then I can adjust the workouts so that they can be happy coming in 4 or 5 times a week. But now all of a sudden they're getting the proper recovery because their time in the gym is a little bit less per workout. Now the client is happy. So it was optimal for me to deny them that 4th and 5th day. Yes. But they wanted more. They wanted to come more. Maybe for their mental health. I don't know. Maybe they just wanted to do something a little bit more 4 or 5 times a week. So I found a compromise. I found a way to give them what they wanted, but also make sure that even though it wasn't optimal, it was optimal adjacent. So I say, okay, let's do 4 or 5 times a week, but for half hours instead of hours. They're like, well, I don't know about that. I'm like, well, listen, try it and see how it goes. And then guess what? Maybe that still doesn't work and we got to figure out something else. My point is, 1, be patient with them, be patient with yourself when you can't figure it out on your first try. Trial and error is there, even with a trainer, even with a coach, even with a nutritionist. Number 2, you mold and adapt to the person and their needs, and then you read between the lines so that you can ascertain not only what they need, but what's going to satisfy them the most. Keep them happy, because the happier they are, the less likely it's able to become a chore. The less likely it will become a chore, the more likely they are to do it. Number 3, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Do not overcomplicate things. Now, if you want to get creative, if you want to create a program that allows them to track everything they eat and drink, their sleeping, their workouts, and so on, feel free to go crazy on Microsoft Excel or Sheets. Share it with them, see their weigh-ins in real time, see how they do their food and record their food day to day in real time, whatever. Do whatever you want to do. If you enjoy it, I do. I revamped a bunch of those programs recently. It took me days, close to a week, several hours a day, just to get it the way I wanted it. But I made something new. Maybe 5 people in the next 3 years will use it. but it made me happy that I created this new thing. And above all else, if you're a trainer because you fell into the profession, you were a college football player who didn't make it to the NFL, or you just kind of liked working out and you couldn't find a job, so you got a training certification just to get a job, please only do this short term. And I say that because I've seen those trainers. They do it because it's something that they know, it's something that they're air quotes good at. And when your heart's not in it, you don't do well. You can help people and you can do good, but I have to say, when you see a trainer who's just doing it because it's a way to earn a living, you can tell. And yes, they do help people. So I'm not going to say, I'm not going to poo-poo that person, but I will say that just like any other job that you don't necessarily enjoy and you're doing it just because you're good at it, you'll start to resent it like anything else. You'll grow stagnant, you'll stop growing, and you'll just do the same thing over and over again. And that does no service to your clients. It only lowers your quality of service to them, and that's a real problem. Now, if you can surpass that and be a good trainer, regardless, great, good for you. Maybe you can earn a really good living and enjoy your life. But I have to say, being a trainer it's not hard work, but it can lead to hard times. Because this is the last thing I'll talk about, finances. This is very important. Personal training is not my only stream of income. It never has been, and it never will be. I am starting a gym. I am building it here in a little under 2 months. And it will be a private personal training gym. There will be no memberships. And it will be my largest source of income, but not my only source. And I'll explain why. I've been training for almost 12 years. It's basically the only job I've ever had. I cleaned cars, parked, and moved them around when I was 16. That's the only other job that I had. And for the vast majority of my time training, I have made less than $25,000 a year. That's working full time, by the way. Most of that was my 6 years at LA Fitness, where the most I ever declared at the tip top of their pay scale was about $24,000 and change after taxes. To give you an idea, that is their advertised rate of you as their master trainer, as it was called at the time, making, at best, $30 an hour. The thing is, doesn't work out that way in terms of when you do the math. And that would be because you are not paid salary, you're not paid hourly at LA Fitness. You are paid per client check-in. So if you wanted to do 40 hours in a single work week, you would have to have 80 client sessions in a single work week. Now, that's very hard to do. It's doable, but the thing is, it's very unlikely that all of those sessions are new sign-ons. See, master trainer position is advertised to you as the trainer as, yeah, you can make as much as $15 per half-hour session. Yes, you can, but then they tax you. Oh, and by the way, you only make that rate if somebody is a new sign-on. Thankfully, they did grandfather in your previous clients so that they wouldn't have to pay anything different. Because as the master trainer, you're paying $50, $60, $70, $80 per half-hour session as the client. That's a hard thing to sign up for. But if you sign up with one of the normal trainers for $40 a half hour, $50 a half hour, and then they somehow get grandfathered in when that trainer becomes a master trainer. This is why there were so many regular trainers being pushed to master trainer when they had no experience or credentials. They're excited because they're going to make so much more money. The clients are excited because they got a good deal. They're working with a master trainer now because they get grandfathered in at no additional cost to them. But then all of a sudden, people who want to come in new and train are working with these green trainers who have almost no experience. And they're paying $60+ a half hour to be a new sign-on. Now the trainer can make that money. The problem is it's so damn expensive, the person can only come one time a week. for a single half hour. So you see why it's so hard to get that $30 an hour for 80 sessions, or sorry, $15 per half hour for 80 sessions a week, or $30 per hour at 40 sessions a week. That's very difficult to do because that relies on the traffic the gym can get and the sales ability of the sales staff. That's how it was at LA Fitness. It's very difficult. And again, I did well. I was happy, but I was also in school full time, working another job at Mercy Healthplex at one point, where I had to get my own clientele, or at Miami Oxford when I was doing my master's degree, where I trained the faculty and staff, where I made like $13 an hour or something like that, and I trained them. It was free to cost to them. That was a fun situation where I could work with people as often as I want. They could come in 5 times a week if they wanted to. It was great. I loved doing it. But my point is, finances are important, and as a trainer, when you first get started, you will be making little to no money. It is not going to be your only stream of income. Unless you're lucky like me, where you can live at home with your parents while you're going to school, and you have very little in terms of bills and overall monthly costs to you, yeah, you can do that as your only job. But if you're a working, able-bodied adult, and you have kids, or pets, or a house payment, of which I had none of throughout most of my 20s, you're going to have a really hard time. And if training is your only source of income, you're going to have to really compromise on a lot of ethics and other values or principles that you may have and hold dear, specifically just to make sure you can make ends meet. And I highly, highly recommend you do not do that. So, if you're going to be a trainer, expect to make very little money, at least at the start. It takes years to build your book. It takes years to become good at what you do. And like I said previously, you always strive for good. You'll only know that you're close to good, because you'll never be good, but you only ever know you're close when you hear from your clients, when you hear from other trainers, when you hear from people who see you and they go out of their way to tell you. Your feedback will tell you how good you are or how bad you are. And here's the thing, if somebody says something bad to you, they criticize you, they give you feedback that's negative, that's fucking important. Because if you address that, if it's a very real piece of feedback, if it's a real criticism, and it pisses you off because it's kind of true, that's important. Look for the criticisms that piss you off. They're pissing you off because you know it's true, at least in some way. And that's how you can get better. And that's why I say there's always a way to strive for better, because no one's perfect. No one's going to be perfect. No one's going to be able to be fully good. Don't be a Sith Lord. Don't deal in absolutes. Save your money. Be frugal. If this is what you want to do, be ready for some hard times financially. If you can, try your damnedest to make sure you have another stream of income to supplement your training income, because let's face it, people go on vacation. People stop coming. People drop off. People move. People get injured. Not doing things with you, hopefully. I have a guy who's out right now. He's been out for almost 2 months because he tore his hamstring going on a water ski trip. So he was water skiing. He was 1 month out from being 60 years old. Tore his hamstring off the bone. He's out for 2 or 3 months. And that was a 3-time-a-week appointment. He pays me $40 per session, 3 times a week, $120 a week, $480 a month. I'm no longer getting because he got injured. Can you imagine if your current paycheck, all of a sudden you weren't getting $480 each month, $240 off your bi-weekly paycheck? That's a big decrease. That's what I'm talking about. Another example, I have a lot of clients that are from overseas. They're immigrants, or they were born here, and they have family overseas. And I have 2 clients that are coming back this coming week, and they come 3 times a week, $30 an hour per person. So $60 per session for the 2 of them. Okay? 3 times a week, $180 a week. Well, that's $360 every 2 weeks, $720 a month. For the last 6 weeks, I have not been getting $720 out of my monthly earnings just because they went overseas. They went to India, they got married, They spent time there for their honeymoon. They stayed there for work. Now they're coming back and they're going to get started again. That's a lot of money for most people. So be aware that your income as a trainer will fluctuate a lot. You need to be smart with your money. Now, that is more of a perspective into what it's like being a trainer. For those of you that are not interested in being a trainer, you can gloss over that. It's not all that important. Maybe you can sympathize a little bit and maybe not no-show or cancel last minute, but just understand that that's how it goes. It is a difficult job for some. Me, on the other hand, I quite like it. I consider it quite easy, to be completely honest. It's very simple. I quite enjoy what I do. I am never, ever disappointed to be going into work. I love what I do for a living. Sometimes I'm tired. Sometimes I want to go home and see the girlfriend or play video games or just go to bed. But I am never disheartened to be there. I love what I do. Hopefully, if you're thinking about being a trainer, you also will love what you do, and that's what attracts you to the profession. I really hope that if you're watching this and you're wanting to be a trainer, that is your motive for wanting to become one. Because if it's just an avenue for you to make more money or become Instagram famous as a fitness influencer or what have you, those are the wrong motives. That being said, hopefully you found today's episode a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more, I don't know. Hopefully I gave perspective to an aspect of my life that I find very important. And if it's not applicable to you, maybe you just enjoyed hearing my experiences and my perspective on the profession of personal training. Either way, whether you can use the information or not, I hope you enjoyed. The podcast will be posted a little bit late this week just because yesterday was the 4th of July. I had a lot going on, and I just decided, all right, I'll push it back a day. Not the end of the world. I'm still going to get it out this week. But thank you for listening, and thank you for being here over the last couple of weeks, as anxiety-ridden and dark as they got. I appreciate you. Have a great day. Have a great week. And again, thanks for listening. I have been Norman. I am your dude. You my cast. Deuce Magoose. And peace out. See you guys next week.
It's time to put our times behind. Get off the bad things off your mind. He's feeling good. She's feeling good. We're feeling good. Yeah. Just hanging out. Just having fun. We're number one. Just hanging out. Just having fun. Better than your friends, there's no problem. You can win. Someone who's always got your back, not caring about this or that. Just hanging out, just having fun. We're number one. Just hanging out, just having fun. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude. We're all just say I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude. We're all just say I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude. We're all just say I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude. We're all just say. All about meeting new faces, the smiles on your face and you can't erase it. Partying on, it's going on, partying on till the break of dawn. Oh, it's time to put hard times behind, get all the bad things off your mind. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. Just hanging out, just having fun. Just hanging out, just having fun, we're number one. I'm a dude. He's a dude, she's a dude. We're all just say I'm a dude. He's a dude, she's a dude. We're all just say. Whoa. What are we doing now? Oh, we're breaking it down.